Hi everybody, welcome to Maitri Plays Games. I am Maitri and I'm very passionate about tabletops and I am on a quest to become a better GM, a better player, and a better person. And I want to share with you some of the cool stuff that I've been learning. Continuing our mindful gaming series here with a tangent that's coming later, much later, because I'm still figuring out how to format it on GM Burnout specifically. I want to talk to you about something a little bit more broad, which is feeling like you're burned out on things you love. Specifically, we'll talk about tabletop games here because that's what we talk about on this channel, but it's really more broadly applicable. I do want to remind folks that I am not a therapist and I will be staying away from clinical terms like depression and anxiety and that kind of thing, and I urge you to do the same. This really is about emotional intentionality and trying to manage your feelings and your behaviors as they relate to those feelings. I just really value the therapy that I have had, and I'm really passionate about personal development, and this is all part of the trying to be a better person part of my intro. I want to talk about this because I guess it for my money, I feel like it doesn't get talked about as much as it should, which is getting burned out on things you love. It's referred to as passion burnout. There's that old saying, right? Do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. And that's sort of broadly extrapolated to mean, if you're doing a thing you admit to loving, it shouldn't stress you out, right? You love it. So what's basically being said is that if you find something that gives you joy, that aligns with your values, and that makes you feel creative and that kind of thing, shouldn't feel like anything but pure fun. And if it does, then there's probably something wrong with you. And even saying it right now like that, doesn't that sound far-fetched? Certainly does to me. Like, how could that even possibly be true? So this is what I mean when I constantly say a problem well stated is a problem half solved. We've already arrived at the idea that the central premise is flawed. So, how valid are the feelings that come out of it? Probably at least worth examining. So, doing what you love, pouring all your energy into it, may be the key to some people's happiness. Certainly, it seems to be the key to other people's happiness, which it's really difficult to not compare yourself to and feel a little bit sad, even, that you aren't feeling that same joy. Instead of finding joy where you expect to in running or playing tabletops, it somehow becomes this weird energy sucking endeavor that you don't really look forward to and maybe even dread a little. Fairly innocuous things will frustrate and overwhelm you. All of these symptoms of life burnout will be experienced, but within the context of being sort of something you ostensibly love. And then you feel guilty because this is the thing that you do to step away from the life and the work stuff. So how can you be burned out on this? So again, it causes a lot of these fairly complex feelings. It also looks and feels different for folks with different identities and different lived experiences, as it does with anything really. But the sort of consistent through line for pretty much everyone is that you experience mental and physical exhaustion. It's what happens when you equate things we love with not really needing effort. It propagates this sort of mythical belief that, if you love it so much, you should be looking to do more of it, right? Like higher quantity, higher quality, or both. If you are not looking forward to it because you're not jiving with the group, that's a different thing, obviously, and not really what we're talking about here today. More like, 1 minute it's thrilling and passionate and engaging, and the next it's kind of exhausting and overwhelming. When I was doing research for this topic, I came across this really awesome Harvard Business Review article, which I will link in the description. It references a Dr. Ellison who says something I want to share directly. If you are so inspired to do what you do, then you're not necessarily good at setting boundaries. We need to teach people that setting boundaries is okay. It's not selfish, it's actually selfless. It allows you to be more effective at what you do and to better help those you wish to serve. If you go back to the first video in this Mindful Gaming series about broader life and work burnout, you might remember that I said there that you can't pour from an empty jug. That's what this is as well. So for tabletops, like with anything else, as I said, looks different for different folks. The pressure could look like, you want to know a new rule set like the back of your hand before you're willing to GM it, or you don't feel like you can run a game at all unless you have like your Foundry modules in place just so, or you have to constantly reshuffle the rest of your schedule to make time for your weekly game. Any number of things really that make you more kind of dread the game rather than look forward to it. Anyway, if any of this sounds like you something that you're experiencing, please do some more reading and educate yourself on Passion Burnout. Specifically, you can look up details about harmonious passion versus obsessive passion. I can only scratch the surface here today and identify for you that, this might be happening and it's maybe worth thinking about. So to give you some brief definitions that you can start to use, harmonious passion is when the activity is motivating because it brings a certain level of pride and contentment. The activity is a key part of who you are and your identity even, but it doesn't fuck with you to like take breaks or step away from it to engage with other things. Like doing other stuff doesn't make you feel guilty about ignoring this or whatever, and this is ideally where you want to be. On the other hand, obsessive passion occurs when the key driver for performing an activity is not so much personal pride and contentment, but external needs and validation and rewards. And that kind of passion can lead to burnout. So for tabletops, you're convinced you'd be letting people down if you set boundaries or step back or anything like that, for example. That's external. That's an external force. Recovering from this burnout is definitely possible, but it does need work. So like I said, you should definitely educate yourself more on this subject and figure out what works for you. But here are some sort of broad strokes things that people can do to kind of manage these feelings a little bit. Number 1, remind yourself why you play tabletops. Try to remember those early days, especially when it was kind of new and exciting and fresh. It's so easy to get lost in like day-to-day bullshit, but that moat of purity and joy still very much exists. You would just have to remind yourself of it. And this might mean that, you need an in-person game if, you haven't played one in a while and you used to regularly. Or maybe it's checking out a new system or a new module for a system you know and love. Either way, take the time to reflect on what brought you joy before things felt so stressful. If you are someone that does well with articulating your feelings, maybe write down your current negative feelings and try to figure out where they come from, and where they first started, and do this exercise without judgment. Did you start a side hustle involving tabletops? Like, maybe you started a new campaign, a new game, maybe you're playing with a new group. Give it some thought. Number 2, step away. Give yourself some space. Allow yourself to engage with other things without judgment or guilt. It doesn't change your participation and your enjoyment of games and your identity to step away from games for a bit. Being passionate and loving something doesn't mean you have to do it 24/7. And basically, every free moment of your life doesn't have to be dedicated to this. It's okay to do other things. It's okay to take a break, You're allowed to have other interests and to do other things. Don't feel guilty. There's no reason to. You're not neglecting anything. Certainly not your passion, which will be there tomorrow. Scale back the frequency of your games, fewer games, fewer sessions, whatever. Give yourself a chance to miss it a little. Then when you get back to it, you can sort of participate with this kind of renewed vigor. Number 3, say yes to inspiration. It's really easy to look around and see people who are happier and more successful in you in this area. And, especially when you're feeling kind of burned out and compare yourself to them. But rather than like a negative comparison, try to look to these folks for aspiration and inspiration. See what is resonating with them, see what they are passionate about in the space, and try to really engage with them on that. Or try to engage with that. For example, someone I really look up to was kind of raving about the Hunter 5th edition book. And that made me sort of instantly want to check it out. And I'm so glad I did because it's so good. But if I hadn't opened myself up to allow myself to be inspired by the person, which I would have done anyway, because this person is someone I look up to and cherish, I might not have come across this. I mean, I would have heard about it maybe, but I wouldn't have spent the time to sort of engage with it. So the point here is to engage with other people's loves. Let other people reignite that fire for you. And with tabletops, it could be a book recommendation. It could be a friend who's like dying to get you in a game, or try a new system. Just say yes. Experiencing someone else's work who is a master of the craft especially will spark the joy in effort and creation in you. So yeah, passion burnout, it's a thing. If you feel like you're experiencing this, the first thing to do, as I said, is to educate yourself on it and reflect a little. But when you are ready to start managing and mitigating it, start by remembering the joy. Never forget the joy. Remember the complex joy of putting in effort and how awesome it is to do this thing you're really good at and that, other people enjoy from you. And remember the simple joy of doing something you love. It's so easy to drown in day-to-day mundanity and just BS, and start sort of seeing even something as fun as gaming as just like a thing you need to check off the list. If you want to come back from that, you definitely can. You're awesome. Anyway, that's all I have right now. I'll link a few articles in the description box for folks to check out if you want. If you like this video but you don't like notifications or subscriptions, I have a backlog of stuff, and I put out stuff on Wednesdays and the odd Saturday. I've also started working on an audio-only podcast format for people, if that's better for you, because I know the YouTube app is funky for some folks, but now that is about to start existing. Check out the link in the description below. So otherwise, thank you so much for hanging out. Come see me again soon. Bye.